Hello everyone, welcome back. Hi, it's Monday, so we have some ghost stories for you guys today. Thank you so much for sending me all your stories again. I very much, truly appreciate it. You can send them right here to this email address, ghost stories, weird things that happen to you, weird experiences. It doesn't have to be paranormal, it can just be a little bit strange, you know? But again, thank you for sending them. I am going to get round to reading all of them, so if you sent it, even like a while ago, I'm kind of starting right back from the beginning and I have somebody helping me get them all together, if that makes sense. So yeah, good time. So I have a new ring, which you may have noticed, which is this amazing kind of like tongue, black lips, and these cute little vampire teeth here. And I also got a matching brooch as well because they look really cute. I'll leave a link to the Etsy shop below that I got this from. This isn't like, it's not like a sponsorship, nothing like that. I just really thought you'll like it. So yeah, I hope you're all well. I hope you had an amazing weekend, as amazing as you can, you know. It's gonna be a good week this week, I feel. So let's start off with some ghost stories. Now here's my theme for this week. Let me shuffle forward. I'm kind of thinking like somebody who maybe tripped too much on some magic mushrooms or like acid and did something really wrong, which ended up in them dying. So I want to go quite neon. I want to go like really bright and see where it takes us. My eyes, again, sore, allergy season, and also I've been doing makeup just before this, so I've only just taken my makeup off, given it a few minutes to relax, and we're going back in again. So if this is your first time here joining me on a Mondays I read all your ghost stories that you send to me, like I said before, and create a look based on some kind of ghost. I have mentioned a few times in this video series that this is very much based on Bailey Saren's Murder Mystery Makeup Mondays, where she does true crime and makeup together, mixing two things that she loves. So I'm doing the same thing with horror and ghost stories because I absolutely love them, and I love doing makeup, and it's just something different to kind of get my mind away from intense makeup artistry and you know, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, anyway, so let's get right into it. Let's start with our first story. It says, "Hey Robert, so here is this story I wanted to tell for quite some time now, but never got to, as I never found the right place for it." Well, this is the perfect place for it. "I was 6 or 7 years old and was visiting my two older half-sisters with my family. They lived in a 10-story apartment block. It's important it's 10 stories, remember that. At first, everything was normal, but after some time, the older one of my half-sisters, who was about 10, and I got bored. So we decided to go outside and explore the building. The apartment that they were living in was on the second floor, and even though I am badly afraid of heights, I wanted to see what the view was like from the 10th story. So me and my sister hopped on the lift/elevator, and as children do, we decided to press the button to every single floor on our way up, and some adults. At first, everything was normal. Up until around the 7th floor, where things began to get weird. On the 7th floor, the hallway looked abandoned, and there were boxes and cobwebs, but we thought nothing about it, as there were quite a few empty apartments. But with every floor, it just got creepier and creepier, until on the 9th floor, where it looked like a construction site, and it felt like somebody or something was watching us. We started to panic and wanted to go back down, so we pressed the button for the 2nd floor, and closed our eyes as we hugged each other tight in fear. I didn't open my eyes again until I could feel the elevator going down. When we were going home, as we went back to our car, I looked back at the building and a shiver ran down my spine. There were no constructions going on at the time, and all the apartments didn't look empty. The building was torn down a few years ago and is now a park with a playground." Weird. Thank you so much for that story. I have actually read quite a few stories where people kind of go to explore buildings. I was actually just listening to one about the Queen Mary, and people who almost discover like an area somewhere that doesn't exist, if that makes sense. Really strange, really weird. I mean, buildings, especially buildings you don't know, can be really confusing, but it sounds like slipping into like a parallel universe is quite a common thing. Thank you again for that story. That was very cool. I feel like, guys, just a warning, I feel like no eyeshadow is going to sit in this outside corner because I'm tearing up quite a bit, just because, you know, sensitive eyes and allergies going on. Okay, our second story is called Tall, Dark, and Not So Handsome. One thing I just want to do for you guys before we get into stories now is kind of put trigger warnings in there. I know a lot of people can be quite sensitive to different subjects, so I do just want to let you guys know ahead of time that certain subjects will come up in these stories. So this story in particular references suicide and mental illness. So the story goes, my husband and I lived in my parents' home for a few months during my pregnancy in their garage, which was turned into a large spare bedroom. I once had that room years before and had various issues with it, like horribly vivid dreams, and my best friend's 3-year-old would never go in there because of a very tall, dark man with very scary teeth. No. I found out later that there was a man who lived there who had committed suicide in the garage. Cut to near the end of my pregnancy, and I'm lying in my bed one night about to go to sleep when I hear a very loud, deep, boisterous, evil laugh in my right ear only. I was not asleep, and I felt that feeling you get when someone is behind you that you cannot see. It happened many times after that with various words and noises, and it would happen all day and night. Thankfully, we found a house a few weeks after my son was born, but my mum now uses this room, and needless to say, since she's been in this room, all of her energy has quite literally been sucked out of her. She sleeps 90% of her days away. She has horrible dreams and seizures constantly, even though her neurologist says her brain activity is normal and they cannot find the reason. That's terrifying to think that something can mess with your health. Because I have such a leaky eye. Ooh. Okay, so our next story is called My Mum's Ghost Stories, 3 Ghosts at the Bar. So it says, hi Robert, a massive fan of your channel, thank you. I'm currently in college studying makeup artistry, so you're a massive help, and was really excited to see you telling ghost stories. Oh, amazing, well, good luck with your studies. My mum's grandmother was married 3 times. Her second marriage was to my mum's grandfather, Charlie, though he died before she was born, and her third was to the man my mum grew up knowing as her grandfather, George, though there was no blood relation. My mum was in her late teens, early 20s when her step-grandfather died, and she and my nan, her mum, were visiting her grandmother a few days after. In the flat was a corridor which you could see down from where my mum was sitting. She glanced down it and saw 3 men standing at a bar, each drinking a cup of tea. The first was a soldier with sand at his feet, who my mum didn't recognise. The second was a man in a white shirt with tattoos on his arm. And the third was her step-grandfather George, who had recently passed. After a few seconds, the men acknowledged her, then walked away, with George calling her the nickname he'd called her as a child. When she mentioned this to my nan, she was shocked for a moment, then explained who the men were. The first was my great-grandmother's first husband, Alex, who she had married and was widowed from within 6 weeks. He was a soldier who was killed in the war in the desert, hence her sand at his feet. The second was my mum's biological grandfather, who died when my nan was 14. He and Alex were brothers, but no one knows if my great-grandmother knew this when they married, or if it was just a coincidence, because she never met either man's family due to the war. And of course, the final was her grandfather, who she had adored her whole life, saying one final goodbye to her. She wasn't allowed to mention this to her grandmother, as it would scare her. All 3 of my great-grandmother's husbands united in watching over her, and she never even knew. Cute. That's so cute. Thank you so much for that story. That was really nice. Aw, imagine them all just looking after her. That's dead nice. Okay, our next story is called The Girl in the Dirty Nightgown. That just sounds terrifying already. So, my husband / then boyfriend of 2 years and I were ready to move out on our own. At this point in our relationship, he travelled all the time. Gone for 2 weeks, home for the weekend, and back out on Monday. My husband stumbled upon this place he really liked, and I went with my mum to check it out while he was travelling for work. I remember walking through and feeling like something was going to jump out of every empty corner I saw. I shrugged it off, and we ended up moving in shortly after. It didn't start off too bad. Just little things like seeing a little black shadow dart under our feet, which we'd mistake for our black cat. The feeling of being watched or someone being there other than yourself seemed to always be there, which was worse when I was alone for long periods of time. Eventually things progressed into being constantly woken up in the middle of the night by loud bangs and what sounded like a bowling ball being rolled along the hall ceiling. I remember walking to the kitchen one morning and every single cabinet door and drawer was open. You'd think that I'd be frightened off right there and then, but I usually blamed it on something else, either loud neighbours or my husband or my cat, who I knew had learned how to open the bottom cabinet doors. Then things got really bad. I was having nightmares constantly. One night, I dreamt that I'd woken up from a dream while still in a dream. I was laying in bed, but I couldn't move or speak. I heard the bedroom door creak open and looked to see a woman in her early 20s with long black hair and dirty white nightgown, standing with her head down and hair covering her face. She took 2 steps and leaped on top of me, growling and shaking. I eventually woke up and called my boyfriend and then my mum, crying. I saw this apparition out the corner of my eye a few times. Another morning, I woke up immediately feeling like something was staring me down from the second I opened my eyes. I had to get to work, so I showered and got ready as normal. It just felt like something was right behind my shoulder or in my face the entire time. My fluffy orange cat followed me up to the front to get his food. I was bending down to feed him when I heard what sounded like someone taking a sledgehammer to the wall. That was about 4 foot directly behind me. At the same time, the clock that we had on this wall flew off and hit me on the back. My cat jumped 1.5 feet straight up in the air and ran down the hall back into our bedroom. We ended up moving 700 miles away, and it was like a weight was immediately lifted. I remember feeling really weird when we got into our new home because things were quiet again. I couldn't imagine being home alone in this house that was basically like terrorizing me the whole time. I couldn't think of anything scary. Thank you so much for that story. I'm happy to know that your newer place was a little bit more peaceful for you. Okay, so our next story is called The Shy Child. Another child ghost. Great. When I was 9 years old, I visited my grandmother because it was her birthday. She had her friends come over as well. They were all talking about the dances they learned in the old days. Cute. My cousin and I went straight into her room to play Nintendo, when after a while we heard a faint knock on the door. When I opened it, there was no one there, so we shrugged it off and carried on playing. Again, there was a knock on the door, which was louder and clearer. When I opened it, there was a little kid that smiled. He looked eerily familiar, yet I could not pinpoint who he was. Before I could even ask, he ran away shy. We waited for another knock, and after a few minutes, there it was again. A knock which is much louder than before. I opened the door and there he was again. He ran and I chased him as he went and hid behind my grandma's back. I asked my grandma if she saw the little kid. She looked a bit concerned and she said, "No, I only invited my old friends. You and your cousin are the only kids in here." The hairs on my arm stood as I heard what she said. I described the kid to her, and that is when I found out that my grandma had had another child who died when he was still young. These kind of stories always make me wonder, like, what's that child doing? Is he waiting? And how long has he been waiting for? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, what happens when you die? But that's a bigger question anyway. Thank you so much for your stories this week. This is the finished neon-y kind of look. My eyes are leaking like crazy, guys. My lashes are flicking up in the corners where it won't stick down because I'm so wet. I added like a blue kind of sickly highlight, which actually kind of looks kind of nice once it's buffed in. This kind of neon tone going into like this pinky duo tone happening. Have I done my brows? No, because I keep forgetting. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that what am I saying? Like I said, I'm making my whole way through them. I'll have more for you again next Monday. If you have any ghost stories, weird stories, is your neighbor keeping aliens in their shed? Let me know here on this email address. Thanks again for joining me, guys. I'll be back with you on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Links to everything I used in this video are below, so if you want to check out a product, please go ahead. Affiliate links will be clearly marked as well. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, and I will see you very soon. Have an amazing week. Bye.